somebody who's been getting in the news a lot right now is Elon Musk. I believe 75% of the people that worked at Twitter got rid of their Twitter profile kind of recently. So you can't imagine what that workplace is
No.
like right now. So I actually have a video that we can look at right now.
First, let's talk about Elon Musk's Twitter takeover, hitting a new bump in the road as the social media giant temporarily closes its offices after a wave of employees parted ways with Twitter. That came after Musk's ultimatum to commit.
So, yeah, he had released this tweet about like if you're gonna be here, you're gonna have to do these crazy
Just like
hours.
a hardcore work environment or something that they would have to accept.
This Chinese model, yeah, it's almost like he's just punishing them, like that. This was like a petty move,
Yeah.
and he's just was mad at Twitter and decided that he was just going to lash out. And
I know, right? I want to know from like a Tesla employee, like, is this how he always acts, or is he just like losing it right now? Like all these people who work at his other businesses, like, what is he like SpaceX? How does he act in that environment?
so we have our headline: 8 SpaceX employees say they were fired for speaking up against Elon Musk. So it's
Oh
not just
wow.
yeah, it's not just Twitter right now. So here's Reuters when I maybe a 30-day window was passed, and he said eight Twitter employees of SpaceX have filed unfair labor practices charged with the U.S. Labor Board against the rocket maker, alleging they were let go for speaking up against founder and chief executive Elon Musk.
Can
So
I just take a moment though to talk about how everybody was like, "Oh, the liberals hate billionaires," and like, ugh, ugh, like these people are assholes. Look, like you can't be a billionaire without having these issues. Like he goes in there and is like, if you're not gonna work like this, like I'm gonna kick you out. That just shows how little they value people. Like
yeah,
you hear Amazon horror stories all the time.
at a certain point, you would, if you had respect for yourself and you've been in the industry for a little while and you had the confidence, like this to me is what you would do with like a really low talent, low motivation type population. Right, like if like high school students when they work at like CVS or something, they tend to need this like regimented, more serious
Yeah, like
authoritative.
as soon as they get a little bit of authority, they want to rub it in everyone's faces and be like, "Oh, you have to listen to me," you
Yeah.
know? But I don't understand why we keep defending billionaires when this keeps happening. Like these are the people that we want to give tax cuts to so that we have to pay as middle class people more tax and pay for their workers to be on unemployment or, like the Social Security or whatever the hell. Like
Well, and look
they,
at all the subsidies that Elon Musk gets. He must have gotten billions of dollars for that tunnel thing that never came out to anything. Now we're nowhere near apparently being able to have these self-driving cars. Like
yeah,
these
they're
things
just
were
blowing
pushed
up
on.
everywhere.
I think they're getting pushed back now. Like they just keep having accidents. Like it's not quite ready. And like you make all this money by doing these crazy projects and getting all of these benefits. Who knows how much SpaceX takes in from it? So you just I just don't see the benefit there. And if somebody wanted to really go at it themselves, let them do it. But I don't see I don't see the reason for it. So let's see if there's anything else here. So what exactly did they say? So what do you think about just like I didn't know that you were allowed to publicly criticize your boss, right? That's kind of That's kind of strange, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Like, if we had people
is this like
calling me
a
out.
dictatorship or something? Like, I don't understand. Like, these people want to act like we're. I don't even want to disrespect another country by saying that. But this is not how you're supposed to act in a democracy. This is not how you're supposed to act in a first world country.
Yeah,
You're not supposed to be
yeah.
able to disrespect your workers. You know, at the very least, we expect the wealthiest people in America to give people jobs. Like that's the least that you can do is while you're making all this money is employ people. And now you're gonna just like cut people's livelihoods away. And I get that if it was just a isolated event, we would, oh, go find another job. But everything in the tech industry right now is cutting. Like Amazon's doing
Uh,
cuts, Meta's doing
Facebook.
cuts.
Yeah.
Where the hell are they gonna find jobs?
Yeah, yeah, it's not like any of these ones are in a hiring spree. I was looking at it seems like every position is open at Twitter, but think about how I don't believe that you'll get talent if you have that kind of mentality. There's always going to be turnover, so you have to be attracting talent to
Yeah.
have any business survive. And I couldn't imagine. You know, for a second I was like, should I just like shoot a resume for like a dream kind of job position or whatever? And I was like, like I'm just not at the age that I can meet that kind of, and I work, a million hours. So like the idea that you're just going to sit there and like 101, like grunt work, grunt hours, sleeping on the floor. I just don't care about the bottom line of billion-dollar company that much, and I couldn't.
No.
It's how
And they're
could
never
you?
gonna pay you enough to make it worth it. That's the
No,
sad reality.
yeah, that you're gonna sleep there, like, yeah, and I know what you mean about not wanting to like say another country, but like it is true that in China they really do have this system where people will like sleep at the place,
Have
and
you seen the coffin apartments? That might be a good video to pull up, where people are living in like um a studio that has like these tiny little like cages where they spend their time. That's where they're living. It looks like a dog cage.
so yeah, this is
It's getting really bad. Hundreds of thousands of residents now squeeze into incredibly small apartments, most of them no bigger than a parking space.
So these are cage homes, which basically
This is
they
just
literally
crazy.
have they literally have
With one of the
cages
best
though?
savings rates in America,
Yeah.
banking with Capital One is the easiest decision in the history
You might
of
have to
decisions.
get
Even easier
a
than this.
YouTube membership
Stop. You're
if they're
in.
gonna force me to
Yep,
watch
even easier
Slash
than that.
videos.
What's in your wallet?
It's funny that you have to see these rock stars forever. Like if I were Slash, I would just leave. Right? At a certain point, how many times are you gonna fucking stand there doing Sweet Child of Mine until you're 100 and you got
Well,
your die?
if it keeps you rich, I think you just keep doing it.
He's got enough.
In spaces that are between
ngầm kìa Phi gia nhập lại tàu
75
kim
feet.
tàu
What did you say?
I said 75 feet is crazy.
Yeah, yeah, right. That, and they just have like a full family in there. See, this is what I've always said from the time I started hearing people compare China and America in this way, that we have something to learn. And obviously, there's things to learn, but something to catch up on. Like, I just don't believe that you should have people spend this amount of time in such a cramped world with working ridiculous hours. And there's a tremendous need for hard work, but there are limits. And these people seem like they're giving up their entire life, all the things that make humanity meaningful.
Well, this is what the US is going, moving
Yeah,
towards
we're working towards.
because they are still working for a very small amount of money and their housing is super expensive. That's like people in Paris being paid what people in Mexico are being paid. You know, like it just doesn't make sense. And in America, you see this with the incomes that we barely see any change since like the 80s. That I think a lot of times these videos and horror stories from China or Hong Kong are like a warning for the US. Like this is not what we want to happen to our workers. These people aren't seeing the wage increases, even though the people who are owning the factories are making more and more money every year, and now their housing costs so much money, but they don't have the incomes to cover it. And I think this is something that we really need to make sure doesn't happen here in America.
Yeah, and this is the dream of like the worst type of capitalist, right? You
Yeah.
just you take all of this, they don't deserve anything, and you just treat your people like dirt and
It's
amplify
like
again.
everybody, looks out for themselves, and you're not supposed to work or, worry about your workers or whatever. And I think it's a very dangerous slope to go down. And we've talked about it before where socialism or, communism and capitalism have the same endpoint where a dictator is pretty much, or like somebody controls what you work, what you get to have, and you have very little, and then they have everything. Like you work and somebody else gets all of the reward of it.
It China is unique in that they actually have a higher suicide rate for women than they do men. And I mean, just thinking about their former policies of not allowing more than one daughter. What was it? It was some kind of rule like that, right?
I don't know if there was a rule, but there were like you're only allowed to have one or two children. And
Yeah,
so if you didn't have a girl or you didn't have a boy and you had a girl, I think they were like killing them, right? Like just leaving them
yeah,
outside.
yeah, and that it just would never become economically beneficial. But it goes to show just that what all that work will do. I mean, it's men and women, and often women and have these horrendous kind of like low labor repetitive jobs for hours on end. It's not an easy life. So yeah, whenever I hear about anybody talking about like China's GDP, I'm like, I really don't care. We'll we'll
No,
figure it
and honestly, like what's happening in China is mostly our fault because a lot of the factories that are in there are funding stuff that we're either buying or using in our factories or our businesses here. Like even the
out.
tech industry.
It's an amazing thing when we talk about like green things and carbon emissions and this. There's a lot of hypocrisy from America with this because we've simply outsourced what our pollution to other countries. So we're still utilizing these things when China is pumping out charcoal emissions in these factories. Like we're the ones buying all this stuff. So just
Yep.
because we're not physically the country that is doing it doesn't mean that
We
like
are
we
doing
don't
it.
seriously benefit from it. Yeah, exactly. It wouldn't
It's
be
like
happening.
our trash. It's we pretend that trash just disappears when we put it outside in the dumpster, but it doesn't. They just take it away from us.
Did you ever see the people would actually pick like we would sell our garbage to the developing
Oh yeah,
nations?
like African countries and stuff. And they'd like
Hmm.
pull out like certain things out of the computers. They're probably all getting
Exactly.
cancer from it.
Yeah, you imagine that. Yeah, if you're doing it enough, who knows what you're gonna get. And then it goes to show you maybe we'd be better off with like a noble king, right?
I don't think so.
You wouldn't be fine with Prince Harry and Meghan? Just
Yeah, but okay, even if you say, like, let's say Harry is a good guy and it's questionable, like if you give somebody power, like what they're gonna do with
Mhm.
it. But then what's gonna happen after Harry? Like who's gonna get it after that? So this whole thing that like everybody wants a dictator, like, no, you don't. Like, we need everybody to have a say because if not, like, bad things happen. Because the majority of people, I'm always going to believe this, the majority of people are good and they don't want to hurt anybody. Like, even people who are racist or sexist, they usually don't want anything bad to happen to the people that maybe they don't value as highly, but they don't want anything bad to happen to them.
Yeah, I would agree, and might even feel bad if they realized they hurt somebody's feelings who
Yeah.
was another race. Like if some black guy overheard a racial joke or something, I think they might even have guilt or regret for just that. But yeah, I think most people don't want. I think that's fair to say. Most people don't want uh, to hurt others. I think most people also desire a safety net of some extent. That there's few people that are truly that rugged individualist, like I just full libertarian. I think most people really value the government, and that's just it. It's hard to find that balance, right? Of exactly how much government is enough government, and when does it get too far? Uh,
Yeah.
when does being secretive cross the line for safety? It's all very tough questions that people have been asking for hundreds of years at this point.
Yeah, and I think it's also a fair question to ask why are people not wanting to live their life? Like, why are people happy being stuck at home and doing nothing? So, obviously, like, in their mind, there's nothing better to do. And I think a lot of people are like stuck in this unhappy, depressed way of feeling, and we need to get to the bottom of it. Like, what is causing the majority of people in the world? Like, you just talked about suicide rates. I heard that they're, what are they, like tarps or like something to catch people outside of these factories because so many people jump out of them and try to kill themselves. You see it in every country that people are killing themselves.
Yeah, I think we've also seen a decline in democracy around the world and like an increase of these kind of authoritative governments. And I wonder if there's a connection between those that treating people so inhuman and people feeling like they have no agency or control of their destiny. And
Yeah,
what that does to somebody
it
when you're
makes them
just
not
this little,
vote.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. When you're just like this little cog in the wheel and just desperate to survive yourself, and it gets very tough. And then you pick up, and then it's like a what is self-licking lollipop, where
I thought
you
I would never have to hear that again.
that the more people feel like that, the more they respond to kind of fascist messaging. When you're feeling low and disenfranchised, the best thing in the world is to hear that somebody is lower and more disenfranchised, and that's like the concept of like the poor white racism, that the people
Yeah.
that are the maddest are the ones that are so low on the totem pole themselves that the need for this other to be a little bit lower than them just means the world, and you can at least make jokes about them even if you don't have a pot to piss.
Yeah.
for that. So let's see somebody. This was a recent story with Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. You know what they do that bugs me when they'll replicate old pictures. So and they'll like do a kid's hair in the same
Uh-huh.
way that the queen was photographed when she was 3 or 4, and they'll put that with like a very similar outfit on. It really plays on the like your subtle emotions, but
Mm-hmm.
that's like a king. We accept that like a king and a royal family have this need to build this story and to advertise it and keep in the hearts of the people. Like in a capitalist country, that obviously England's a capitalist country with a mock monarchy, but I'm talking at a certain point. Like in a country like America in the modern era, like what's the idea that unifies the country? It's easy when it's like, well, there's the king and we love him and he's divinely prospered, but there's no reason, or it's at least not the same reason for everybody. And you ask, like, can a country survive if you have too many people with very different ideas about like what the country is for? And in a lot of ways, I think that's like what we're dealing with now
Yeah.
in our United States.
But in some ways, it's almost like each side can't exist without the other side. It's like the Democrats are anti-Republicans and the Republicans are anti-Democrats. So at this point, it's like yin and yang, Like
Yeah,
they
they
can't
wouldn't know what to
exist
support.
without each other. Like if the Republican Party went away, what would the Democrats be? It would be the conservative Democrats versus the liberal Democrats. So it would end up being the same thing. Like so at this
Yeah.
and if you got rid of the liberals, what would the conservatives be? It would be the liberal conservatives versus the more like staunch conservative. So I feel like no matter what we do, like we need to respect each other because it's it's part of like the whole process is we have to have each other or we have nothing. Like we have nothing at all.
And yeah, it builds a healthy country. Even on my kind of most conservative days, like I wouldn't want to be in a conservative city.
Yeah,
It's
and
kind
did
of
you
like there's
see
a nice like the super conservatives aren't producing art. There's no art galleries in these places or
no.
music, and like it's for a healthy country. You need all kinds. Yeah, I think that's like
Did you
the
see my article earlier where some of the four largest cities have black mayors? So LA, Houston, Chicago, and New York City, they all have black mayors now.
yeah. I can't. I would say that the one in New York, I believe, is the first that I've ever seen in my life. I think he's got to be the first. Eric Adams. I think Eric Adams has to be the first one that was in New York, and probably in it. I'm seeing Lori Lightfoot
Yeah, well, she's been around for a while.
for that. Yeah, so it's Sylvester Turner. And so, yeah, that's interesting. They look like they're majority like Democrat-run cities for that. But yeah, you're seeing more. It's not a great example, but like we saw a race in Georgia between two black candidates, and Herschel Walker and what's the other guy's name? Something with an M. Murlock.
Crazy.
Yeah, they're both. It's
Herschel Walker, Mr. Crazy Pants, and what's the other
Mr.
guy?
Family Values. Yeah.
Warnock.
Yeah, Warnock. I think I said Warlock.
He's like a reverend, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. It's so wild to think of the implications of these elections and the control of the House and Senate, and you look at it like it's Dr. Oz is a candidate in this thing, and like this event involving Dr. Oz is going to have vital implications.
It's kind of mind-blowing, like how the Republicans have tricked poor white guys into thinking that the party is for them. When you look at Dr. Oz versus Fetterman, Fetterman is a old white guy who wears only sweatshirts. Like I know a lot of guys that would identify, with this politician, and you'd think like if he was a Republican, people would love him. Like he looks like he would be a Republican to me a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
But
It wouldn't surprise me.
But because he's not like there for Dr. Oz, or you see like, you have a reverend versus a football player who has left all of his wives, but somehow he's the Christian guy who's like anti-abortion. Like how are these people getting tricked into
Numerous
this?
abortions.
Like
Yeah.
how are people getting tricked into these people? Like I don't understand it. Like the people that you would like a person who is a preacher, like that should be a conservative, like in your mind, but it's not. Like the way they paint the Democratic Party is not real. Like there are, like, look at Manchin. You have a coal guy. You have Fetterman who looks like a biker, like looks like my dad kind of, like without tattoos. You have preachers in Georgia. Like, what's wrong with you guys? Like, you should like these people.
yeah, exactly. That's a very good point. That is a very good point about it.
Like Biden's an old white guy who worked with the segregationists. Like, what's wrong with you guys? Like, exactly. You should love these guys.
He was so close with that guy Bird, who was like a grand wizard in it. Like exactly. There's no evidence that Biden knew about it, but I mean, if you're very tight with somebody in there, I would say you have to be extremely racist to be in the KKK.
Or at least tolerant to it.
Yeah, like it doesn't. I'd be shocked if he didn't make. I'd be shocked if any member of the KKK doesn't make like racial jokes to their buddies like behind closed doors, right? Like that has to be a gimme. He didn't just clam up and say, "No, Joe, I think Martin Luther King's great." I don't believe it. I think he was probably pretty open with it. And then you just have these weird. I guess it's just you're so caught up in that game. And when you look at the claims that Republicans make about like Democrats or the left in general, it's so dire. Like it's like this guy's literally a communist. And there's absolutely like some truth to that. If you would have told people in the 1950s that like a legitimate percentage of a social science floor on a college or staff were socialists, they'd probably be scared. But like when you look at it now, like it's an ideological difference that falls within a scope of being pretty normal. It's not national socialism with racial.
No, and I think you see this happen with words all the time, that they change their meaning over time, where something like socialism used to mean communism, but now people think socialism
on an international level.
Yeah, exactly. Now you think of socialism as more of like a democratic socialism that is capitalism with social programs, like basically what we have now, but maybe like expanded.
It's like effective.
Yeah. Exactly. Our healthcare system is so messed up that Natalie has like a $600 premium every month, and we went to go get her like a CT scan, and they're charging her deductible is the same amount of money as it would be to pay it out of pocket.
What?
And at one place it was less to pay it out of pocket than we would have to pay our deductible.
Yeah, I'd like to see like what's like how much like an actual insurance that you're not going to deal with crap costs. Like
There's
what's
none. There's none. That doesn't
they're always
exist in America.
yeah, they're always going to fight it in some way. Yeah, it's so rotten to the core. It's got 100 years of issues behind it.
Yeah, the only good insurance to have is like Medicare or something like that because most things are covered, but then most places don't take it. So if you have good insurance, that's like a government kind of insurance where they'll cover you and you can't get kicked off and all this, then no place wants to take them because they're probably not paying for anything. You know, they're probably like, we'll pay 20% of what you're charging, you know, like
Yeah, you can go to like the public hospitals, I guess. You know,
is there
my
public hospitals? I've never seen any anymore. Like now they're all private.
yeah, I'm trying to. You know, my mom worked at. I believe there was two on Long Island at that point, and
Wow.
there was talk about it going and becoming private many times. So yeah, it does go to show that
I
that's kind
think Florida is a lot worse because in Ohio there were a lot of like government or like the school run, which is basically the state government run hospitals. But in Florida, everything is private, private, everywhere you go. And even inside the hospital, like different places own it.
yeah, yeah, that's true. When I go to these things, you know, it's like yeah, you have 100 different doctors' offices. It's like a doctor apartment building, and like you go to one of them, and then you need the referrals from everybody, and it's yeah, it's a lot. It's definitely a lot. Like I think the whole issue um, with America for most people, I think the biggest complaint is that like it's not you're paying a lot now in taxes, and then you don't really have any good social credit
No, like
for the
I
like the
don't think
average
those
person.
countries are taking that much more than what we pay, and they get health care, they get all sorts of
Yeah.
shit.
Well, I think about we talk about like declining birth rates so much, but like what would incentivize women more to have babies than like paid leave off guarantees or you know these kind of preschools that are public or at least subsidized
Hmm.
to be able to get it off like that would make life so much easier and then thinking that you're in constant jeopardy if you get pregnant of losing your job and
Exactly.
you know having a month or two off. So when you have these kind of family values kind of conservative perspectives, a lot of these issues could be remedied by like a state compromise, and that just we kind of keep ideologically away. I kind of got sidetracked on it, but I was saying that like you make such like the right makes such extreme accusations that like these people are like pro pedophile or killing babies, these kind of like really extreme things that maybe it's easy to justify. And I guess if you want to be fair, like on the left, you could be like they're fascists, you know, and you know, like Nazi, racist. And so even if your guy gets a cheating scandal, or something, you're gonna like look the other way because hey, at least they're not
Yeah,
an extreme fascist or something like
exactly.
that, or a baby killer.